Hey folks, welcome to week 4. So let's take a second to review what we've been doing so far. We wrote the personal statement for the Foundation Scholarship, right? That was our personal essay. Then we got into sources and learning the CRAP journalistic method of credible, reliable, authoritative sources that have an educational purpose, that are fact checked essentially, right? And I think the big lesson from that week was we learned that it's not so much a matter of bias, right? Everything's biased. The most important thing is the source fact checked, right? The Christian Science Monitor was a great example of a source that sort of threw people like, oh, it sounds biased. But in fact, it's an extremely fact checked newspaper that's been around for a while. They have great authority. The journalists have degrees. Does that make sense? So then we took what we learned about sources, and we've been finding great sources on our new topic, music therapy, and now we're making arguments about music therapy. So let's get into this week a little bit. We're on week 4. So this week you have a draft of essay 1 due, okay? So you're going to post that under the assignment box. I will give you feedback in the assignment box. Then you post your draft again to the peer review discussion. And that's where you will talk to your colleagues, right, each other, about your papers, right? I give you some feedback guidelines or rubrics. Use that, or if you have your own ideas, use yours, right? I just want to give you suggestions for helpful feedback. I love to start with what's working and then move into what could be improved. I think that's a great model in life, right? Here's 2 things that are working, right? The claim is very clear. There's great use of credible evidence, right? You're using our class article, you're using other fact-checked sources, and here's what's right? And here's what you could add, right? So use that model of here's what's working, and here's some ideas for improvement. Okay, so you're going to think of it as you're posting your draft twice, right? To the assignment box where I'll give you feedback, and then to the peer review discussion box where you'll give each other feedback. And then you also have a little mini discussion, which I'll get to in a second. So I almost wanted to say questions, anybody, but we're not in the classroom. So let's go through the discussion right now. The discussion is just a real short discussion. It's 5 points. I just want to get us into thinking about different ways of making claims and what an application claim is. An application claim is a great way of applying one idea to a new context or new situation. It's a great way to say something new, okay? So I've given you a short reading on Seattle Children's Hospital. They have a music therapy program. And Bronx Public Schools, which have a music therapy program. So these institutions, a hospital and public schools, right, in New York, already have a music therapy program. Seattle area schools do not have a music therapy program. Does that make sense? So can you apply these existent programs to make an argument that, oh, well, we should have something like that too, right? So that's an example of an application claim. You're applying one idea, right, to a new context. Seattle, right? That's the new context. So you have those 2 readings. So it's just, read those short readings and then just, engage these discussion questions. And a claim, right, might come out of this discussion. I show you Bloom's taxonomy. I'm going to pull this up in another form. This is just a complex way of saying, folks, this is a great visual for creative thinking, for critical thinking. If you've ever had a teacher say, oh, I need more analysis from you, or this isn't critical enough, or this isn't creative, this is sort of what we're talking about, okay? So my students love this. It's a very clear picture of what creative, critical thinking actually looks like and feels like. So if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, this is sort of where we all start, right? Oh, I read this article, right, on music therapy, right, for high-risk youth, right? We read that. Can you remember that article, right? What is Tilly Allen saying? Can you recall the facts and the basic concepts? What is music therapy? How do you practice it? What populations are used with music therapy, right? How do you address high-risk youth with music, right? That's all in that article. That's just remembering, okay? So you want to start there, right? What is this article saying? What are the ideas? What are the arguments? Then you go up the pyramid, right? We're going up in thought to understanding, right? Can you start explaining, right, to someone else, right? What is music therapy? Can you identify it? Can you discuss it? Can you describe it? Does that make sense? So can you explain these concepts that are brought up, right? What's a high-risk youth, right? And how might music therapy help different populations, right? So we're still at the bottom of the pyramid, and we're not making any new arguments yet here, right? If you just define music therapy for your paper, that's not an argument, right? That's just you remembering and understanding. So you have to go up this pyramid for this paper and the next paper, right? So moving up, right, we get to apply, right? This is where you start creating something new. Can you apply information from an old situation to a new situation? That is making new knowledge, folks. You're not just summarizing old knowledge. That is not creative thinking. That's not critical thinking. That's a high school research paper, right? Oh, music therapy is this. Music therapy is this. That is not creative and critical. So can you apply our reading on Brooklyn Public Schools and Seattle Children's Hospital, right? They have these extant music therapy programs. How can we use that as inspiration to make a musical therapy program here in Seattle Public High Schools? Does that make sense? That's solving a problem. That's creating something new. So that would be an application claim, right? Critical, that's very creative, that's very critical thinking. Or you could analyze, right? I'm moving up the pyramid of thought. Can you draw a connection between ideas, right? Okay, we've had a reading about using sort of hip hop, right? Music, right? To help high-risk youth, especially for right, for many populations really respond to hip hop, right? Youth really respond to hip hop, right? So I want to draw connections now to like, okay, right? What about, that's looking at more English language based hip hop. Let's look at, we have a large Mexican American community in Seattle, right? Let's look at Mexican Spanish language hip hop, right? So we can sort of address sort of acculturation, stress for that community. Does that make sense? See how I'm drawing connections, right? That reading talks about hip hop therapy. I want to now draw this new connection to, well, let me find songs in translation, or let me find songs in other languages, right? So that would be an analysis claim, right? You're creating something new. Or evaluate, take a stand, right? If you think that we shouldn't have music therapy in the high schools because maybe it's a distraction, or maybe there's better approaches to dealing with health and anxiety or cell phone addiction, right? Then come out and take a stand against music therapy as an idea for Seattle, right? For this region. Does that make sense? So yeah, you can make an evaluation claim. Take a stand, right? Or take a stand like, Seattle invented grunge, okay? So I'm going to argue, I'm going to defend grunge music therapy for, Seattle, maybe like colleges and universities. Grunge is a little bit older. I don't know if young people are listening to grunge right now. Does that make sense? So like I'm going to use grunge music therapy for more like a 30-something, 40-something crowd in therapy. Does that make sense? But I'm taking a stand. I'm arguing something for specific. Or create, right? Create a new music therapy program. Okay. So I think you get this visualization of what I'm asking you to do. Your claim, your argument cannot stay at the bottom of the pyramid. You have to move up the pyramid. Here's some examples of this. I give you a short reading on what does it mean to have a debatable claim? What does it mean to have an arguable claim? Okay? So your claim has to be debatable, right? Saying that, here's a claim that's not debatable. I argue that music therapy is new and effective. That's my original creative argument. No, that's not debatable. There's hundreds and hundreds of articles that prove that music therapy is effective. That's a fact. You're not saying anything new yet. Does that make sense? So that's not an arguable claim. So take a look at this reading. It'll help you with this understanding of, well, what is a debatable claim? A debatable claim is also specific, okay? So you want to be as specific as possible. So for example, let's say, right, I listen to a lot of Sam Smith. I love his music. I'm going to make an argument about Sam Smith and music therapy, right? And so the new here is I haven't found any articles that suggest using Sam Smith for music therapy, right? So I'm applying ideas of music therapy to Sam Smith. And I'm like, okay, well, what sort of health outcome could Sam Smith address? And I start thinking, I go on Google Scholar, I put in like different types of issues in the LGBTQ community, and I get somewhere with that. I'm doing research, and I get to this idea of queer joy, and I'm like, oh, queer joy, right? Like, and Sam Smith indeed is all about addressing queer joy. Okay, so now I'm making connections. I'm creating this new claim of I want to propose a musical therapy program that uses Sam Smith to address queer joy in for LGBTQ folks and students in Seattle public schools, or in private professional practice, right? So there's many venues that music therapy is used in, right? But do you see how that's an example of a new claim? I'm applying ideas, I'm making connections. It's something new, right? That's what you need to get to for this paper. And I've got all these, right, fact-checked articles from Google Scholar that are going to help me make this argument about using Sam Smith, right? None of these mention Sam Smith and queer joy. I'm making that connection myself. That is my job as the writer, to say something new and make connections, right? I've got all these things on, right? I could define what queer joy is, right? Take a paragraph, this is what queer joy is. And now I want to make an argument that Sam Smith can help address this. And I would quote from his music that really show queer men and women like embracing themselves, embracing life, like living large, right? So his lyrics prove that he can be used to address queer joy, right? So I'm going to bring in his lyrics too. Here's an example of a bad claim, okay? So here's an article. It's a .org, right? And it's talking about using the rapper Logic and his song about suicide ideation, 1-800-2738, right? So this article is already saying, it's already proving, it's already arguing that we should use Logic, right? That hip-hop artist, to address suicide, because his song is about suicide prevention. Does that make sense? So here's an example of, if you make this argument, it's already been made. This is done. This is known. You don't want to do this. And I know, often in high school, like, we're taught that, I'm going to summarize what someone else said, and that's enough. That's not enough, right? So you're not looking for an article that already is proving what you want to prove, okay? That's done. You want to make new connections. You want to make new knowledge. You want to go into the unknown, okay? So again, if I get a paper about, using Logic for a music therapy program that's already done, I'll just be like, this argument's already been made. This has already been proven. Please redo this. Please find a new artist that hasn't been discussed for music therapy. Does that make sense? So that's where you want to get to with this paper. You want to move from what's known, right? There's a lot that's proven about music therapy. There's different artists and genres that have been put forth. And then you want to move into the unknown, right? Okay, right, we know what music therapy is. We know it's effective. I want to use Sam Smith or Janelle Monáe or Lady Gaga or Lil Nas, right, to address queer joy. That's what this paper is asking you to do, is to create a new connection, okay? If you have any questions, let's zoom. Email me. I can't wait to see what we do this week. Thank you, folks.